It was the Zach Calzada show on Saturday afternoon, and the Aggies pulled away in the second half for a 34 to nothing victory over New Mexico. Lot to get to on the show. This is the Texas A&M New Mexico postgame show on the Voice of College Football. Again, Texas A&M in their final game before opening conference play next week. Opens with a pair of touchdowns to take a 14-0 lead on their first two drives. A little bit inconsistent after that, but ends up with a 34 to nothing victory in their first start under Zach Calzada. We'll talk more about his performance, what Jimbo Fisher had to say. The defense putting up their first shutout since 2016 were really impressive on Saturday morning. Even against New Mexico, it's tough to get a shutout, but Texas A&M did exactly that. We'll discuss their performance. And Damon Demas finally gets his first catch, and it goes 70 yards for a touchdown. We'll talk about him and the rest of the young receivers that played. There was quite a bit of rotation on Saturday, which I know Texas A&M fans had been clamoring for. But to give a little recap, so Texas A&M scores 14 points on their first four plays from scrimmage on Saturday to take a quick 14 to nothing lead, and then it was a bit of the same story of sputtering on offense, punted on their next two drives, followed that up with a 12-play, 60-yard drive to take a 21 to nothing lead early in the second quarter. Added another field goal late in the first half to take a 24 to nothing halftime lead, and then it was a little bit of the same. Just kind of a little bit stuck in neutral for most of the second half. But again, in his first start for Texas A&M, Zach Calzada finishes 19 of 33 for 275 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. Came out in a really good rhythm. Texas A&M got him going with a couple quick passes. Started with a 16-yard completion to Chase Lane. One play later, found Devon Achane for a 26-yard touchdown. And then on the second drive, found Damon Demas for a 70-yard touchdown. And just like that, you thought it was going to be a great day offensively for Texas A&M. But starting there on the offensive side of the ball, it was a bit more of a struggle for Texas A&M, especially along the offensive line, which is concerning heading into next week with SEC play beginning against Arkansas, who's certainly going to provide a much stiffer test, especially along the defensive line, than New Mexico will. And Jimbo Fisher addressed that in the post-game press conference, saying they've simply just got to be more physical. It comes down to communication, got to pick up blitzes, stunts, gave them a lot of trouble. They were without Layden Robinson in this game, who sat out after being nicked up against Colorado. So he sat this one out. Kenyon Green moved over to right guard. Blake Traynor saw some time at right tackle, struggled. But really the whole offensive line struggled, and it comes down to not being physical enough. And that was the big message heading into next week from Jimbo Fisher, is simply put, it's time for the offensive line to start clicking now. This is big boy football, and there's going to be some challenges coming up. So Jimbo Fisher was certainly not completely satisfied after this one. I know 34 to nothing is a convincing victory, but he's looking ahead to the SEC play beginning. And simply put, he said they're a very average football team right now, and he's right based on what we've seen the first 3 weeks of the year. Kent State got off to a slow start, obviously pulled away in the second half. Against Colorado, were sputtering, especially offensively, as we covered last week, for most of the game until the fourth quarter started to come alive. And then today, it was another case of everybody's kind of taking turns. At times it was the offensive line. Zach Calzada had his mistake in the third quarter where he forced the ball that he should have just thrown away, ended up being in an interception. And then at times it was, receivers dropping balls, running backs. They got Isaiah Spiller going this afternoon. He finished with 15 carries for 17 yards and a touchdown. He was excellent. Couldn't really get Devon Achane going in the running game. He only finished with 9 carries for 29 yards. Got nicked up late in the game, but Jimbo Fisher said there was no concern there as he came out of the tent, gave him a thumbs up. So he should be good to go for next week against Arkansas. But simply put, the offensive line was a bit of the story of the game. Wanted to see them take some strides this week, especially coming off the game against Colorado, and didn't really do that. There were procedural penalties, had 3 false start penalties, just not able to finish blocks. And as Jimbo Fisher said, one of the things that he wanted to see in this game that he didn't was just simply moving people in the running game. He's seen it before. He's seen it in practice. And didn't get it done. And that was, I think, disappointing against New Mexico and leaves you with a little bit of concern heading into conference play with Arkansas, with Mississippi State. That's an area that's going to have to get cleaned up very, very quickly. You could tell there was a sense of urgency from Jimbo Fisher that the physicality is going to ratchet up quite a bit heading into next week. And so that was one thing I think you would have liked to have seen was see him. We'll see the offensive line exert a little bit more control. Got to talk about the defense and Damon Demas. We'll start with the defense again. First shutout since 2016 for the defense. Another really, really, really good performance. Held New Mexico to just 33 yards passing overall, 122 yards total. And just 89 yards on the ground, which I think is a very important note to pay attention to, especially considering who they're going up against next week and what Arkansas can do on the ground. Edgerrin Cooper comes away with an interception late in the game. He had a really good day flying around to the ball. His speed on the defensive side of the ball really adds a lot to that linebacker room, and he's off to a really good start to the year. Just his anticipation and activities getting much better. It was another good week for Michael Clemens. He was in the backfield quite a bit, generating pressure. McKinley Jackson also made his return after missing the first 2 games of the year. He had a quarterback hurry and also had a tackle. Thought he added a lot, especially stopping the run, which again A&M did a fantastic job in that regard, holding New Mexico to just 89 rushing yards on 36 attempts. That's 2.5 yards per carry. Really, really good stuff. Especially looking ahead to next week. One thing I liked that Jimbo Fisher stressed during the week was to play with that intensity for the entire game, and I think that's something you really saw in this game, especially early on. Forced punts on all 6 drives that New Mexico had in the first half. Limited them to the drives. No drive when longer than 6 plays. So just really getting in and getting off the field was really good stuff on the part of the defense, and especially New Mexico really struggled on 3rd down, finished 6 of 17. For the day, and no defensive penalties for A&M. So that was good stuff on their part. We've talked about it over the first 2 weeks of the year. People have been asking, when are we going to see Damon Demas and some of those young wide receivers? And saw him early and often on Saturday. Second drive, Damon Demas runs wide open on a post over the middle. Goes for his first career catch, the former 5-star. It's been a long time coming. He's practiced well. He's really drawn a lot of praise from Jimbo Fisher over the course of the first couple of weeks of the season. Just saying, be patient. It's going to come. And I thought today was really a good step forward for him. And he finishes with 2 catches for 100 yards. And Jimbo Fisher after the game was very clear about the receivers as well. A&M was without Caleb Chapman. In this one, they were without Anais Smith for the second part of the game, and that's when we got to see Moose Muhammad as well. But he said, going forward, the best receivers are going to play, and there's going to be competition at that spot. It's an area that A&M can get much better at, and so he was very clear that the best receivers are going to play going forward, and that could well mean more playing time for Damon Demas. I don't know how you couldn't play him more after this afternoon. He's got to there's no question he's got to make strides in certain areas. He's got to make sure he's engaged as a run blocker. That's an area that I think he can still grow in. But you saw the big playability that he has and what he can do for this defense. He has the ability to take the top off a defense, put pressure on a defense, and that's something that as consistent as some guys like Chase Lane have been at times. It's an area that Damon Demas can really add to this offense. And Jimbo Fisher was pretty clear, if A&M gets where they want to go, they're going to need Damon Demas. Also a really good performance. I know he only finished with 3 catches for 24 yards, but I thought Moose Muhammad really had a good day. He had an excellent touchdown catch late in the game on a contested catch, adjusted to the ball well. So really liked what he did, and it could be interesting to see where they're going forward. He also sees some more minutes. I thought those were the 2 young receivers that really stepped forward and took advantage of an opportunity today. And again, a lot of fans have been clamoring to see what those guys could bring to the table, and don't think they disappointed. I like the way A&M spread the ball around today. They've had 7 different guys catch passes. Chase Lane finished with 4 catches for 44 yards. Jalen Weidemeyer, 4 catches for 39 yards. But Jimbo Fisher was pretty clear after the game with him as well. Even though there were high expectations coming into the year for Jalen Weidemeyer, he can still play better. And I think that's going to be the message going forward. Again, going back to Jimbo Fisher's comments after the game, basically cut right to the chase and said A&M's a very average football team, and said it's the truth. And it's going to have to get better in a hurry, especially with SEC play being here. It's going to be a step up starting next week. So A&M needs to get a lot better this week, especially on the offensive side of the ball. On the defensive side, it's just maintaining that energy level, that intensity, and rising to the challenge. They're not going to shut everybody out, and that's unrealistic to expect. I mean, they've been fantastic holding their past 2 opponents to just 7 points the past 2 games. I mean, you can't live on that all season, but they're going to be there on most weeks, especially when the intensity is there. And they've really clicked the past, I'd say, game and a half. And so you like where they are heading into conference play now with a good challenge against Arkansas. And there's some areas really liked, again, what they did, stopping the run today. That was one of the big things I wanted to see. Generated some pressure. So I think they're in a really good spot. And now it's about getting the offensive side of the ball going. And again, I think it starts with consistency. So to recap, A&M comes out with a 34-0 win, but to look at this point, A&M again scores 2 touchdowns on their first 4 plays from scrimmage, and then follows that up with 2 punts, a touchdown drive again to make it 21-0, and then field goal, interception, touchdown, and then you're looking at 3 points the final 21 minutes of the game. And it comes down to the little things. It comes down to details. It comes down to being more physical, especially at the line of scrimmage. Just not enough. Just not enough. Just not enough lanes for running backs to get going. And for A&M, they're going to live on the running game. We know that. That was no secret coming into the year. But to do that, they've got to be better up front, because if they can't run the football, they're going to be behind the chains. The false start penalties are also just a setback for this offense, and that's an area they can still grow, and it's going to have to get better in a hurry. It's just being more consistent. not picking up stunts, and just negative plays leads to inconsistency, and especially with Zach Calzada in there now, it's pivotal that A&M stays ahead of the chains and keeps him in the 3rd and 4s, 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6s even. Because if you start getting into 3rd and 10, 3rd and 11, 3rd and 12, that's when the mistakes start to come. And again, Zach Calzada thought he was pretty good today. His decision making's got to be better on that one interception. You can't do that. You can't force that ball in. It's got to go into the second row of the stands and live to play the next play or punt. But you can't turn it over near midfield. That's just a mistake that can't happen. And then just looking ahead to Arkansas, to Mississippi State. The intensity's got to be ratcheted up. The physicality's got to be ratcheted up. You can't struggle against a team like New Mexico, especially on the line of scrimmage, because we just saw what a team like Arkansas did to Texas 2 weeks ago, or last weekend, 2 weeks from the A&M game, and especially looking ahead to the Alabama game. I mean, that's the benchmark for A&M, and we're still not at a point where a performance like this is even going to be close to being competitive enough to deal with Alabama, especially on the offensive side of the ball. So got to get better. But again, at least you saw some strides in the passing game, especially early. Liked what they did about getting the ball out of Zach Calzada's hands early on. And, for him in his first start, it's not a bad day. 19 of 33 for 275 yards, 3 TDs, and an interception. Again, we talked about the interception, but for the most part, we're able to make plays through the air. We're able to get different guys involved. And now, but this is the second straight week that the running game particularly has struggled. Looking at Hez Jones, we got a bit of an update on him earlier this week. He's still battling a shoulder injury. No timetable yet on when he's going to be back. Still getting over that shoulder injury. Jimbo Fisher said it might still be a little bit of time. On the injury front, A&M again sat Layden Robinson today. He was a little bit nicked up against Colorado, so he did not play today. Miles Jones made his return after missing the first couple of games. He saw action on the third series, and defensively, A&M's just in a really good spot heading into conference play with McKinley Jackson back in the fold. Was able to get him some time today. Moved around to Marvin Leal, and there's really, I think one of the stories of this game too was the play of the young guys. We saw again guys like Shamar Turner involved. We saw Juice Harmon get quite involved early. Jordan Gilbert was out there. Tyreek Chappelle was out there. Did have the holding call on Ananias Smith's big return. Again, there was not any concern from Jimbo Fisher after the game. He said that when it comes to Ananias Smith, he was taken out for precautionary reasons. Ghost fan, I agree with you on Edgerrin Cooper. I thought he had a really good game, really active, and you can just see his speed and what a difference he makes as he continues to get stronger. His speed is really going to be something that gives him a chance to be really, really, really good. His anticipation's getting better. The interception was obviously big time to keep that shutout. I know there was a lot of pride, and it's not easy to shut somebody out. So thought he had a really good day and adds a lot just to that linebacker room with Andre. I thought Andre White had a good day, and Aaron Hansford was in the backfield as well. We just see very aggressive defense right now from A&M, and with quite a bit of blitzing, quite a bit of getting pressure on the quarterback. Tyree Johnson had a sack as well. It was nice to see him get involved. On just the most positive front, I think, though, is the play of Michael Clemens. Speaking of the defense, I think what he's done in his first 2 games so far against Colorado, against New Mexico, would be huge for this defense. And just to keep him healthy, to be honest with you, because last year looked really good until he got hurt. is off to a really good start this year. And so that's a guy, when you look at the front and the depth there, he's really stepped forward into a leadership role. Jimbo Fisher actually talked about that earlier this week. His leadership was really felt against Colorado, which was something we didn't touch on earlier this week. But he was one of the guys, along with DeMarvin Leal, that spoke up in the locker room last week against Colorado. So his leadership and productivity has really gone up, and thought Jaden Peavy also had a nice game. The defense overall, just a really, really nice game, and got to give big kudos as well to Jalen Jones. He's not a guy that gets mentioned a lot because the ball hasn't been thrown his way a lot, but he was thrown into the fire last year, grew up a lot against Florida, and again had a big pass breakup this afternoon, and has just continued to be really, really solid and developed into a bit of a lockdown corner for A&M. I thought he had a really nice afternoon, and gives A&M basically one side of the field to really rely on. So his name doesn't get mentioned a lot, but thought he had a really, really good afternoon. Again, to recap, A&M beats New Mexico 34-0. Zach Calzada in his first start goes 19 of 33 for 275 yards, 3 touchdowns, an interception. Looking more at his performance, again, thought for the most part he was very solid, and I thought the game looked to slow down for him. In most cases, he was under quite a bit of pressure this afternoon, and that's on the offensive line to protect him better. But I thought for the most part got the ball where it needed to go. Had a couple throws that were high. Showed nice touch on a couple passes. Hit the deep ball obviously to Damon Demas, which was a big play in the game. But just liked how they got him going early in the game. On McKinley Jackson, yes, he was out there. He finished with 1 tackle and 1 quarterback hurry. So it was nice to get him back in there this afternoon, and get him going before SEC play begins. But yes, he was back in there, and I thought was a key in helping to stop the run and allow DeMarvin Leal to move around, and it just add to that rotation. We saw Darius Jones out there, Jaden Peavy, even saw some of the some of those younger guys like a Donnell Harris get involved. Antonio Doyle was out there as well. So this was it was kind of the opportunity that A&M was hoping for, to be able to get to play a lot of those young players. And that's something, again, Jimbo Fisher really stressed after the game, was to be able to get those young players involved, to be able to get them experience, because you're going to need them later in conference play. I totally agree with you, Ghost Fan. On the offensive line, I think that's an area that it just has to click, and it's concerning. You would have thought through 3 games we would have started to see them gel, but there's just not a physicality right now that they're playing with. And I think that was the biggest thing that Jimbo Fisher said after the game is it's great to get your a hat on a hat, but you have to be able to move people. And right now, A&M is not moving people well enough. They're not playing with the physicality that they're going to need to play with. And it may work against New Mexico, but moving forward, it's got to get a lot better, and the communication's got to get a lot better going ahead. Because if you look at the stats this afternoon, just looking at here, some of the stats. If you look at New Mexico, 3 sacks and 6 tackles for a loss. That's 6 negative plays. That's 9 negative plays that just put you behind the chains. And again, when you're trying to break in a new quarterback and avoid mistakes, keeping ahead of the chains was one of the biggest things I've mentioned over and over the past 3 weeks. Is you can't be in 3rd and long and 3rd and 10, 3rd and 11, 3rd and 12. And the offensive line right now is just not doing a good enough job of that. And especially in the run game, when you look at Isaiah Spiller and Devon Achane, there was times today where, Isaiah Spiller did break off the 40-yard run late in the game, which made his stat line look a lot better than it probably was. But he didn't have a lot of room at times. They were able to get some things going to the outside, not much going over the middle. And if you can't get the run game, that's going to have to be the foundation for A&M going forward this year is the run game and be able to set things up off the run game. And so I'm with you. I think the offensive line is the big concern heading into next week, and was the big message for Jimbo Fisher coming out of this game was you've got to be able to block guys. You've got to be able to impose your will. The SEC is a line of scrimmage league. It's a trenches league. And right now A&M's not winning the trenches. They haven't, for the most part, during this non-conference play, and that's going to have to get better and to get better in a hurry because conference play is here now. And we saw last week the physicality that Arkansas played with, and I think this is a good opportunity to go look ahead to Arkansas and Mississippi State. The physicality that Arkansas played with, A&M is going to need to match that next week because this is going to be a very, very, very competitive game, and Arkansas is going to give A&M a lot of challenges, especially up front. And it's going to be on A&M to match their physicality. Arkansas is going to be up for this game. The crowd's going to be into it. That program's got a lot of life right now. Likely going to be ranked, I would think, heading into that game as well, unless something happens this afternoon. So you're going to have a matchup of ranked opponents, and it's going to be go time. It really is. And again, I think I agree right now with what Jimbo Fisher said, that he's got kind of an average team, and I think that's the way they've played through the first 3 games of the year. Is some good, some bad, and just not consistent enough. I think consistency is the big word because you go up 14-0 and you think you're about to impose your will, and then it was just kind of stagnant the rest of the game. You scored 20 points after the first 4 plays from scrimmage, and against a team like New Mexico, you just would have hoped for a little bit better, especially considering A&M the last quarter and a half of the game after the touchdown, after putting a nice drive together of an 8-play, 90-yard drive, to only manage a field goal the rest of the way is just it's a bit disappointing. And I think you would have loved to have seen a little bit more consistent of a performance. But again, I thought, just looking at Zach Calzada, thought he did some good things today. He'll grow from this. He'll continue to grow from it. You can tell that Jimbo Fisher's certainly coaching him very hard right now, and knows the level he's going to have to play at. But frankly, if A&M gets the offensive line cleaned up, I think we saw today that Zach Calzada is certainly a guy that you can win with. He's got the arm talent to be able to make plays in the passing game. I certainly don't think A&M will struggle there if they can protect him. They can get the running game going, avoid mistakes, and they don't need to be perfect. And you have one of the best defenses in the SEC to lean on. That's a great luxury to have, and so I think that's one thing you feel good about heading into conference play. And you're going to be, for the most part, I think, pretty healthy. Again, there was no concern after the game with Devon Achane, who left late in the game after just kind of a weird tackle. He gave the thumbs up to Jimbo Fisher that he was good to go, and so not really too many concerns on that front. Yeah, on Demas, I know there were a lot of people excited to see him, and I thought he had a nice game. And Jimbo Fisher talked about it before, that he's kind of been trending upwards and building towards today. I think just about every A&M fan was overjoyed to see the 70-yard touchdown, and what a way to get your first catch. And it was good for him because for those that have watched, I mean, he's the first guy after every touchdown that's there to congratulate teammates, and so it was nice to see all of his teammates there as well to congratulate him and be there for him. And had a big play in the second half too, and just showed off that big play ability that I think can add a lot to this offense. And nobody's saying that you don't have to have Chase Lane and Caleb Chapman. You need all these guys. And so the more rotation, keyword rotation, that A&M can use, I think will only benefit them in the future. And I think Moose Muhammad really liked what I saw from him as well this afternoon. Had the touchdown catch. He's just he matches up, and he matched up in this game with what we've heard about him coming in. That very sure-handed route runner, catches when it's thrown his way, which is something A&M continues to battle drops a little bit. And I think, you just have to see, there has to be a step up in play from a couple guys. I mean, they have to get Jalen Weidemeyer going. He had a couple catches today, but Jimbo Fisher after the game said, he, as a guy that's going to lead this offense, he has to play better. He had 4 catches, 39 yards, had a drop late, which was just emblematic of kind of the struggles that the offense has. Just everybody, it's one mistake here, it's one mistake there, it's a missed block here, it's a penalty here, it's the interception by Zach Calzada. It's just not quite clicking the way A&M needs to. But I agree on the young receivers. We saw Devin Price get out there as well for a little bit. And then I just on looking ahead to the future, I mean, I really liked what I saw from Mari Daniels. He's probably not going to get a ton of playing time this year, but thought even on the couple runs that he had late, showed a little bit of burst, showed a little bit of wiggle, which was something we knew. He finishes with 3 carries for 21 yards, including that 13-yard carry late, and that gives a lot of optimism for the future. So really agree with you. Really like what I saw from the young receivers, and I do hope heading into conference play, and I think that's the intention of Jimbo Fisher, that there will be a bit of a wide receiver rotation. The more guys you can have in there that can find ways to get open, I think will only benefit. And I think you could say the same on the defensive side of the ball when you start getting guys like Eric Young back, and I thought Brian George had a good couple of games here to start the year, so like what he's doing as well. So you are starting to see some of these young players step forward into roles. Again, looking ahead, A&M will now turn the page to Arkansas on Saturday afternoon next week at 2:30 p.m. Going to be a really big game. I think we're going to find out a lot about A&M, especially coming off the. It was hard to know kind of what to think of this team after the Colorado game 2 weeks ago, and just where the team was. And I think you're going to find out a lot against Arkansas. That's a game I've kept my eye on for a while now, that Arkansas was going to be a test for A&M, and I think you'll see especially where A&M is on the line of scrimmage against a really physical front. We saw a couple weeks ago what they could do, and Mississippi State will be a good test as well. Again, all eyes are kind of on Alabama, but A&M's got a lot of work they have to do before Alabama comes to Kyle Field on October 9th for a game. If A&M can take care of business the next 2 weeks, will be one of the biggest games in recent memory at Kyle Field. That game against Alabama has been on the calendar for months, and it's going to be a huge one to see where A&M is as a program. Yes, on Layden Robinson, I think he was one of the guys that was held out for caution. Got a little nicked up against Colorado. There wasn't a lot of concern coming into the week from Jimbo Fisher. He talked about it being a sprain, but thought he'd be able to play this week. They opted against it at the last minute. So I think at this point you would probably expect him to be in there, and I think you saw how much A&M missed him. Not so much at right guard, but the ripple effect it kind of caused at right tackle. I think A&M's got to get that cleaned up. That was a big concern today, seeing that and just seeing kind of the issues that were caused at that right tackle spot when you don't have Kenyon Green out there. They've got to get him going too and clicking a little bit. I think he's a guy that'll continue to grow, but it's on all 5 to play as a unit. You're going to have Bryce Foster's going to make his mistakes here and there. Aki Agunbi is still a young player. He's been around now for a year and a half, but I still think he's got some room to grow, and he'll get more comfortable as he goes along. And then you've got the conversation right at left tackle with Jameer Johnson. They need him to play better as well. Reuben Father, he saw some time today, and he's still a young player. Obviously, he's a true freshman. That's a lot to ask of a true freshman. Had the false start penalty, which we talked about earlier. That A&M's just got to get false penalties, procedural penalties are the parts that will drive Jimbo Fisher nuts. Just not being able to get lined up. They had a delay of game penalty, had to burn a timeout when they couldn't get everybody lined up properly as well. So it's just those sorts of mistakes that I think you would hope would be further along at this point. But yes, on Layden Robinson, I think the expectation is he'll be back next week, and we saw A&M hold some guys out just as a precautionary reason on an injury front. Again, Jimbo Fisher said that Anaya Smith was also held out the second half as a precautionary reason. So I think he'll be all right there as well. But A&M should be pretty healthy heading into SEC play. Gonna have to play a lot better though, and that's the truth. And I think that'll be hammered home this week, just based on what Jimbo Fisher said after the game. Again, said the team is playing very average right now, and that doesn't instill a ton of confidence. But a team can also click. All it takes is sometimes 1 week, and the intensity's got to get ratcheted up. The physicality's got to get ratcheted up because it's time to go now, and we'll see where A&M is coming in a couple of weeks. But with that, I think I'm going to go ahead and sign off for today. Thanks again for everybody that's joined us, and we'll be back next week after A&M opens up conference play against Arkansas. Until then, take care and have a good weekend.